fringe contenders, maybe legit contenders, your 4, 5, 6 seeds. Let's look at them right now in the Eastern Conference where I have them slated. So I've got the Miami Heat, the defending Eastern Conference champions, as the 6th seed, not having to play in the play-in tournament for the second year in a row. Listen, you guys know I love me some Jimmy Butler. Okay, that dude, Jimmy Buckets. We know what the playoff Jimmy thing. What he did getting this team to the finals last year was absolutely special. He's one of the better shot creators at his position in the NBA. Not exactly known for being a shooter, but can score down low. We know what Jimmy Butler's game is. Obviously, Miami, I know everybody's kind of sold their stock in the Heat, saying like, hey, they came off the finals last year and they're going to add Dame. And it never happened. Obviously, Dame is now a Milwaukee Buck. Listen, if there's any organization that can pick itself off the mat, off of the disappointment of not acquiring one of the 10 best players in all basketball, it is this Miami Heat squad. I know a lot of people are making a big deal about them losing some of their key players like Gabe Vincent. And I'm forgetting the other guy's name that went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the shooters they had. But listen, at the end of the day, let's be honest, those organizations overpay, especially Cleveland paying for that guy. His name is escaping me right now, the shooter for the Miami Heat that went to the Cavaliers. But let's be honest, Miami, more than I would argue any organization in the NBA, Golden State, you could argue, but I'd still put Miami above them in this regard, that they get the absolute most. They squeeze every juice, every drop of juice out of whatever the talent they have has to give. By the way, Tyler Hero missed every single playoff game but the first last year, and the Heat still got to the finals. He's coming back. Is he disgruntled given the fact that he was in multiple trade offers reportedly throughout the offseason potentially? But Bam Adebayo, I think, is going to have a big year. Eric Spoelstra is still the best coach in basketball, and Pat Riley still is the evil genius in the NBA. He is still the godfather after all. So Miami will absolutely be competitive. They will be the 6th seed. The 5 seed will be the Philadelphia 76ers, who are complete turmoil. I am making this prediction assuming Joel Embiid plays this year start to finish as a member of the 76ers. Again, as I mentioned earlier on the show, there have been reports that he could end up with the New York Knicks, that the Knicks offered a package, something like Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, some multiple first-round picks. I mean, a haul, no question about it for Joel Embiid. I do think he'll finish this year with Philadelphia. Whether or not he'll stay there long-term is a different matter. But listen, I love Tyrese Maxey. I think he'll be capable of being that number 2. James Harden will come back at some point, but I think by the time he does, Maxey will be the established second-best player, or second option, rather, on this Philadelphia team. They still have Tobias Harris. They still have some of these key veteran players. Again, I don't trust Philly at all. I did like them hiring Nick Nurse. I think Nick Nurse is an upgrade over Doc Rivers. We've seen Nick Nurse coach teams to championships in the past and have playoff success before. So I do like that component, but it's typical 76ers. There's in-house drama that's gotten to the outside, and I feel like it's going to derail them once again. But I do think they're simply too talented not to be amongst one of the 5 best teams in the East. So I've got Philadelphia as the 5 seed. At the 4 seed, a team I'm really buying stock on as a fringe contender, the New York Knicks. So Jalen Brunson is a guy who I don't know if Jalen will ever. Maybe he will, but I don't think last year, if we had to name the top 20 players in the NBA, I would say over half of basketball fans and media out there would not put Jalen Brunson in their top 20. I mean, I don't, because his tangibles, the things we can see, doesn't blow you out of the building, right? Doesn't blow the roof off. He's a good shooter, good ball handler, good distributor. What I love about Jalen Brunson is his intangibles, his leadership, what he brings to the New York Knicks. One could argue Julius Randle is probably more talented, but if the Knicks were going to try and develop a contender with Julius Randle as its best player, that was never going to happen. We saw that experiment worked a couple of years back, and they made the playoffs, had an ugly exit to Atlanta, and then the next year had an absolutely disastrous season. They had Jalen Brunson. He led them to the Eastern Conference semis. Knicks had a really, really successful season last year, and I think they have the potential to take a step forward. I think they do win 51 games this year. I really, really like the Knicks, where they're going. Tom Thibodeau, one of the better coaches, one of the better defensive coaches in the NBA, like their depth, Emmanuel Quickley, the whole bit. Mitchell Robinson. So they've got depth in New York. They've got playoff experience now. Jalen Brunson has played some big games in his basketball life, dating back to college at Villanova. Whether or not they'll add Joel Embiid remains to be seen. I don't think they'll need him this year, given the pieces they have around them and around Brunson and Randle to win 50 games and be the 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. So there you go. Those are 4 to 6. Those are kind of my fringe contending teams out East. I do think the Knicks can maybe make things interesting. Miami, certainly, we know Heat culture. They're always going to make things tough on whoever. Miami is that one team that obviously we're going to get to teams like Milwaukee and Boston in just a moment. But those two teams, they would prefer, certainly Milwaukee. Certainly Milwaukee, and frankly Boston too, because Miami beat them both last year. Obviously, both teams have gotten better, but both of those teams are like, God, if we can just avoid the Heat, we'd rather play the Knicks and the Sixers with Embiid, without Embiid, doesn't matter. We'd rather play them over the Miami Heat. Like, it's unbelievable. So I do think, though, those three teams are in the mix to potentially contend. Philadelphia would have to make some kind of insane move and add another star with Embiid for me to buy into them at all, because I do think they upgrade at coach, but there's too much drama around that basketball team. Now, as far as the top three seeds in the Eastern Conference, so we're talking about some contenders here. No surprise at 1 and 2. I'll start, though, with number 3, the Cleveland Cavaliers. You're like, Bryce, you're giving love to a Cleveland team? Of course I am, because I'm objective, okay? I may not like Cleveland, maybe seriously rooting against Cleveland. I hope they go 0-82 every season, but that's, of course, not realistic. Look, Donovan Mitchell last year, our lasting memories of him is in that series against the Knicks. He really struggled, shot a bad percentage, had some terrible second halves in that series against New York. However, let's not ignore the fact that last year he did have a 70-point game. Like that did happen. Okay, he was all NBA. He's capable of being that type of player. You do have Evan Mobley, who just gets better and better and better every year. Darius Garland is emerging as one of the better point guards in the NBA. I do think they're well coached with JB Bickerstaff. Really good developmental coach, has turned into a guy where, okay, the expectations are kind of on Cleveland now to really take that next step forward. They made some moves in free agency, adding some guys. So I like where the Cavaliers are at right now in terms of their roster makeup. I like where, listen, when you have teams that get embarrassed, talented teams, by the way, young talented teams that get embarrassed in the first round, no doubt about it. These last 6 months, those younger players in Cleveland, along with Donovan Mitchell, have been talking about, hey, this is our opportunity to get revenge on the whole NBA, not just the Knicks, but really make a statement. I do think the Cavs are a 50-win team. I had them as the 3 seed last year. Sue me. They were the 4 seed last year? Yeah, the 4 seed last year against the New York Knicks. So I do have the Cavaliers as the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. Boston, Milwaukee, that's the debate out east. Those are the 2 true blue contenders in the Eastern Conference, the teams that, if you look at any prediction by anybody in terms of their NBA Finals prediction, it's either the Celtics or the Bucks. Who's the 1 seed? Who's the 2 seed? I'm actually going to give the ever so slight edge to Boston as the 1 seed with 60 wins and Milwaukee with 59 wins. So neck and neck as the 2 seed. The only thing that separated, and it is tiny, it is by the slimmest of margins, because I think the gap between these 2 teams is just tiny. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to work Dame into the lineup and work this Dame Giannis duo. I do think it's going to work. But through the first couple of weeks, like it might be a little bit of a struggle. By the way, LeBron James, when he went to Miami in 2010, I think the Heat might have had a losing record through their first 10, 15 games of the season. So it was a process. They had to work it out, but in the long run, it worked. LeBron was phenomenal. Dwayne Wade, kind of at the end of his prime, was very successful and very instrumental to a lot of championship winning teams for the Heat at that time. I think that's kind of where the Milwaukee Bucks are at right now, where Giannis is Giannis. He's the unquestioned face of the Bucks, the unquestioned leader of the Bucks. And even Damian Lillard acknowledged that during media day. Chris Middleton's your 3. Chris Middleton is a guy who's got multiple All-Star games on his belt, on his resume, and he's your 3. That's great stuff for the Milwaukee Bucks moving forward. They still got Brook Lopez. They still got Bobby Portis. I think they upgraded at head coach. I didn't like the whole situation with Terry Stotts. Thought that was a little weird, especially given his connection to Dame. I thought that was that was a little odd, given how that whole situation sort of panned out. But I've got the Milwaukee Bucks as the 2 seed, and the 1 seed there you see in there with 60 wins. I think the only 60-win team in the NBA this year will be the Boston Celtics. So if you would have asked me this question last month, I mean, literally, or whenever the Dame trade, right when the Dame trade was made, and I said it on the show, Milwaukee's the favorites to win the 2024 NBA title. That is until Boston added Drew Holiday. And when you consider the offseason they had, when you consider they added Kristaps Porzingis, you're like, well, Bryson, Kristaps can't stay healthy. Kristaps is not going to be the number 1 option. He's not going to be the number 2 option. Some nights he may not even be the number 3 option. So you're not going to rely on him to be sort of the anchors, one of the cornerstones of your basketball team. You still have Al Horford there. I didn't love that they gave up Robert Williams in the Drew Holiday trade, but Boston has been dying for a point guard for the longest time. Obviously, remember the years with the Isaiah Thomas, not the Hall of Famer Isaiah Thomas, the other Isaiah Thomas, the 5'9" one who finished top 5 in MVP voting for a season. Kyrie was there for a little while. That got That didn't work in the long run, obviously. Now they've got a true point guard and the best defensive guard in all of basketball in Drew Holiday adds to that team. Great veteran leadership. And I think one of the most underrated acquisitions in the NBA this offseason. I don't think it's close, and nobody's talking about it. Sam Cassell, obviously former NBA player, is now the #1 assistant to Joe Mazzulla with the Boston Celtics. So you're talking about a guy who, Sam Cassell's been around the block. And I'm not rooting against Joe Mazzulla, obviously. I think he's a really, really good dude. I have questions about his coaching, but adding Sam Cassell, their veteran guy, to sort of be the 1B to Mazzulla's 1A, to a certain extent, with the Boston Celtics. So coaching improvements, roster improvements, identity improvements, I think, for Boston. Jason Tatum is still one of the 6 or 7 best players in the sport, in my viewpoint. Jaylen Brown got the bag, rightfully so. They had to keep him in order to stay back in title contention. Love of the Boston Celtics right now. So that's my top 3 teams out east. And we've got a Cavs fan in the comments here. It's my guy, Mike Guido. He will not stop talking about Emoni Bates. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, Emoni Bates, you're not you're not alone in that regard. Emoni Bates was the high school phenom who had some issues character-wise in college, off the court stuff. But Mike Guido said coming to this draft, Mike, if you're still in the comments, was he your 6th best player on your draft board? Something like that. Mike and I did a draft show, the 2023 NBA draft show on the Grid Network back in June when it happened, right after about a week and a half after the finals were over. So it was a fun time. But Mike was very high in Emoni Bates. The Cavs stole him in the 2nd round, and he had a pretty good summer league, I must say. I do not think, though, Mike, Emoni Bates is going to be a key reason why your Cavs win 52 games. Okay, let's not get too greedy. Okay, we got to see him. We got to see him put it together. But there's my Eastern Conference standings, 1-15. I do think Boston, Milwaukee, neck and neck at the top. I think most people have it that way. I've got Boston winning 60 games, Milwaukee winning 59, but just neck and neck in that Eastern Conference. A couple 50-win teams with the Cavs and Knicks, and obviously you got your bad teams down below. We don't need to spend too much time on them. Again, Miami will be right back in the mix, like that team you don't want to face in the first round. So that's my Eastern Conference predictions. And for the record, I don't have a graphic for the play-in tournament, but the teams I do think will make the playoffs, out of the Eastern Conference, the teams that will make the play-in tournament out of the Eastern Conference, to me, will be the Atlanta Hawks as the 7 seed, and I think the Orlando Magic. Watch the heck out for Paolo Banchero and that young group of talent that they've got in Orlando. I think the Magic as the 10 seed will get in the playoffs out of the play-in tournament as the 8 seed and take on the Boston Celtics. There's my Eastern Conference predictions. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.